Well, thanks so much for inviting me here today. I know that you all, as master gardeners, have a lot of expertise and a lot of interest. And today I'm going to tell you about a new program, the Kentucky Master Naturalist Volunteer Program, that might be of interest to some of you as well. Another kind of perspective on learning and applying that knowledge, similar to what you're doing as a master gardener, and just kind of in a slightly different lens. So, the mission of the Kentucky Master Naturalist program is to develop a community of well informed volunteers that advances education, research, and outreach efforts in Kentucky's natural areas. And this could look like a lot of different things. This might be stewardship, things like trail maintenance or taking care of natural areas. It could be assisting with research and monitoring, like citizen science. It could be leading some education, walks, talks, environmental education. There's lots of different ways that master naturalists contribute to our great natural areas. And things that they can learn from participation in our program. So, y- anybody who knows Kentucky knows that we are blessed by many beautiful natural areas. Whether we're talking about Natural Bridge or Mammoth Cave, which is the longest cave complex in the world, from down in southeastern Kentucky, Black Mountain, our highest point in Kentucky, to far western Kentucky with Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake and our kind of Mississippi Plateau environment. Whether you like hiking with friends or enjoy hunting out the beautiful spring wildflowers, maybe you like hunting or fishing, or maybe you like hunting for mushrooms, not animals like me, looking for those chanterelles and morels. Maybe you like some adventure and you like climbing in our beautiful Red River Gorge or enjoying some time on the water or just enjoying some peaceful relaxation. If you love nature, Kentucky is a great place to be. And if you want to learn more about that nature and want to work to improve it, the Kentucky Master Naturalist program could be right up your alley. So, a little bit of background on the Kentucky Master Naturalist volunteer program. Again, our goal is to train knowledgeable and engaged volunteers that are going to be contributing to natural areas and organizations across the state and beyond. This was started by several people at the University of Kentucky, specifically Dr. Carmen Agaritas, working with a wide range of partners like Kentucky State Parks, Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves, and others. So this is a new program. Our very first cohorts were in 2018, but it draws from the experience of other states in their master naturalist programs. Almost every state has a master naturalist program, and it's really exciting to be starting one in Kentucky. So, a little bit of background. Myself and Lori Thomas are the two co directors of this program. We're both in the Forestry and Natural Resources Extension Group at the University of Kentucky. And Anna Weicker is our Master Naturalist Outreach Coordinator. And then we have so many great presenters, field trip leaders, and engaged partners that make this program possible. So, in order to become a Master Naturalist volunteer, first you need to do an initial training that's about 40 hours covering a wide range of topics, everything from geology to botany to wildlife. So I pulled the list of the topics we covered in our last cohort of Master Naturalists so you can get a sense of what that might be. Ecoregions of Kentucky, ecological concepts, geology, soils, weather and climate, water resources, botany, entomology, wildlife, invasive species, environmental education and ethics, archaeology, citizen science, outdoor learning environments, safety and health, and more. So it covers a lot of different topics, all of which are very pertinent to those who not only want to spend a lot of time in nature or they want to contribute to nature, they want to actively be involved in promoting some of these natural areas. And today, if we have time, I'm going to give you a sneak peek on the ecoregions of Kentucky. We've got one of our great presenters who recorded a class for us, and you can get a little taste of what it might be like to be in that Master Naturalist class. In addition to those 40 hours of initial training, we ask that all the Master Naturalist volunteers volunteer on their own with an organization of their choosing for at least 40 hours. There are lots of different wonderful organizations that you could be working with, and our goal is to connect you to them and them to you, not to limit or dictate kind of where that is. So lots of different options and lots of different things that our Master Naturalists are doing, everything from working on newsletters to leading hikes, using a chainsaw to clear trails, to talking with youth and kids about birds or amphibians or many different topics. And after this initial training, membership in the program continues, but we have some annual expectations that every year you're going to continue getting some continuing education and you're going to continue volunteering. So, again, why would you want to be a master naturalist? First, you get to learn. You get to learn about a lot of new topics, whether that's geology, like we see in this picture, learning about some of these rock formations, birds and bird banding, water quality, and macroinvertebrates in these photos, to learning about the different amazing parts of the state, from our prairies to our moonbow right here that you can see. One of the few places on the earth where you can find a moonbow, and it's right here in Kentucky. Also building community, getting to know other people who might share some of your passions, some of your interests, and drive to contribute. And, volunteering, connecting up to organizations who really need your help. Here we can see some of the activities we've done as Master Naturalists, but everything from assisting with archaeology and actually getting out on a site, doing some of that, promoting, in this case, we've got some monarch and milkweed pollinator gardens, looking at water quality, managing invasive plants, all sorts of different things. So that's a little bit of background on what the Master Naturalist program is and how someone goes about being a Master Naturalist. I want to give you a little sneak peek into, what do we learn as Master Naturalists? And I've got a short video that introduces the different ecoregions of Kentucky, our different ecological areas. All right, well, I'm going to start this video, and I want to give a big shout out to Joyce Bender, who is the presenter for this segment. Every week in our Master Naturalist program, we cover a different topic, and we get guided by a different wonderful presenter. And this week is looking at ecoregions of Kentucky, the different parts of the state, the different plants and animals you might find in them, and why is that? And we're being led by Joyce Bender. She's an amazing naturalist and so knowledgeable, and we're just really thankful to have her in our program and teaching us. So just to give you a little sneak peek of what that might look like.
Hello everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about the natural regions of Kentucky as part of the Master Naturalist program. And I know that if you've traveled from one end of our state to the other, you notice that there is a lot of different landscapes that you're viewing through the windshield. This course is just going to give you a broad overview of what you're seeing when you're traveling around, but there's certainly more information that you can seek to get more in depth. The objectives for this class are to identify Kentucky's 3 physiographic provinces and the 9 natural regions that are identified as being part of the state. I'm going to explain the differences between the natural regions. We want to explain the key factors that influence the ecological diversity that we find here in Kentucky. And we want to recognize that there are characteristic species and natural communities in each of these natural regions. So just so you know a little bit about my background, I was fortunate enough to manage the state nature preserve system for 31 years, and so I had the good fortune to be paid to travel around the state and look after a wonderful suite of nature preserves and natural areas, and keep an eye on a lot of really cool plants and animals, not all of which are rare, but you know, they're just stunningly beautiful. And I think that the treasures that are out there can be found not only on some of these great natural areas, but you know, in your local community. It just got to get outside and go find them. And so hopefully this will help you interpret where to go to see some of the rarer ones. Of the physiographic provinces that are in the southeast, Kentucky has 3 of those. The coastal plain, the interior low plateaus, and the Appalachian highlands. Within these are the natural regions that I mentioned earlier, and there are 9 of those. These areas within them share a general similarity in their geology and topography and the hydrology and the soils and the climate and the vegetation that makes them rather unique. When you're talking about geology, the substrates influence species distribution and composition, and that's, you know, you've got things that grow on acid soils, sandstone derivatives, and you have things that grow on limestone soils, which are more basic. The karst and cave distribution in the state of Kentucky is somewhat unique and important to take into consideration, because we have limestone that throughout the state where it is found has been sculpted through erosion and dissolution by water. And so we have some really interesting formations of springs in addition to caves and sinkholes. So there's more to this, and karst really plays a big role in the distribution of a number of species. The lack of surface water means that species have to adapt to other means of survival. And topography is really critical as well. We have mountains in the southeastern part of the state, and we have low wetlands in the western part of the state. So looking at the topography, you're going to have an influence on species distribution from that as well. And rainfall has a key role to play in how plants are distributed in this state as well. Or snow, if you want to think about the top of Black Mountain. The amount of snowfall there is unrivaled in the state. The amount of annual precipitation that we find in other regions of the state also have a role to play in replenishing water in our wetlands, for example. And temperature. If you are a gardener, you know something about how many good days there are in the year for growing things, and the last day of frost and the first day of frost in the fall. So the temperature differences in the state are varied, and the species that occur there as well. So we're giving you all these definitions, and another one to throw at you is natural communities. And that is defined basically as distinct groups of plants and animals that repeat across the landscape in a recognizable pattern. Wherever these similar environmental conditions are met, that they can coalesce in that way. There are a number of factors that shape natural communities. The geology, is it sandstone? Is it limestone that the species are growing on? Perhaps shale? The soil, what is the soil's depth? What is the pH of that soil? Are the soils nutrient rich or poor? What kind of drainage is there? Is it really dry soil? Is it really mucky, heavy soil that just holds on to moisture? The hydrology, is it saturated? Does it flood frequently? Those are important factors as well. And the landscape position, the aspect and slope also has influence on how we see species distributed across the landscape. And this illustration is a really good one to just talk about natural communities that are affected by north face conditions or south face conditions. The north face tend to be cooler and perhaps more mesic, and then if you're on a south face where the sun strikes most of the day, it'll tend to be drier, and that has an influence to play. Also with regards to how water moves in those instances, so drainage patterns, erosion, all of that has to come into play when you're looking at the topography and aspect. And of course there are regional influences on the flora that we have here in Kentucky, and The northern temperate forest is recognized, as well as the Midwestern prairie, the coastal plain, and the Appalachian Mountains have all had an influence on species movement into the state and establishment. This next picture is an eye-opening one in my book. This is a map that shows Kentucky prior to settlement by Europeans, and you can see the vast areas of dark green that are the forested cover, the grasslands that are situated in the south central part of the state, and notice all of the wetlands. That's really the key when I show you this next image, which shows Kentucky now, and you can see that we have lost most of the wetlands that were there. 1% of grasslands are still found in the state, just 1% or even less, to be honest with you. And we have lost about 80% or more of the wetlands that were in this state. And so that has had a drastic impact on what is still here to see in a natural state. So we'll go there to those wetlands that are disappearing rapidly. And the first is the Coastal Plain Province. And that has to do with the Mississippi and Ohio River floodplains. They're characterized by having nearly level, poorly drained lowlands. It's the youngest region in our state in terms of geologic time. The ocean covered this area as recently as 70 million years ago. I know that seems like a long time ago, but when you consider how old the planet is, it's really kind of a blink of an eye. The East Gulf coastal plain is characterized by seeps and sphagnum, which is just very acidic, and there are species of plants that are found there that you wouldn't find in other locations, again because of saturated soils and distribution of these species on the landscape, including cottonmouth snakes, which really seem to like the hills and bluffs above these wetlands in the Gulf Coastal Plain. The interior low plateaus province has the majority of the natural regions that we're going to talk about today. That is a lot of habitat that is bluffs and plateaus. They are most of this land is hilly or rolling, and so that's kind of a characteristic of the interior low plateaus province. We're still dealing with some floodplains here within this province, and these are the ones that are along the Ohio River and up to Owensboro. These are bottomland forest community types. They're found on flat bottomlands adjoining large streams or rivers such as the Ohio River. The herbaceous layer is hydrophytic vegetation, which means that it's very much saturated. A lot of forbs and sedges in this kind of habitat. The soil is poorly drained, and the water table is above or at the surface much of the year. The Shawnee Hills is a very fascinating part of the state. The age of the sandstone is Pennsylvanian, and it's massive, and so there are a lot of bluffs that characterize portions of this region. A common natural community type found within this is the acidic xeric forest or woodland, and there are a number of species that are common to the canopy, and a lot of times because it's so dry in these settings with the soil almost non-existent or very close to the surface with the bedrock, that you have species that can really withstand some punishment in regards to moisture and nutrients. So chestnut oaks, post oak, blackjack oak, species like that that can really tolerate those kind of conditions are most common. And then you'll find things like poverty grass, a lot of lichens and moss that grow on these sandstone rocks. Again, it's a place where you can find glades. In this instance, they would be sandstone glades. And the example that we have here is the sandstone glade for the Shawnee Hills. And you can see that there are a lot of lichens in this picture. There's a lot of rock outcropping, minimal soil, and where there is soil, you'll see that the grasses have gotten themselves established. And many times in these situations, the grasses are just annual grasses that really just come up and flower and seed and die back. It'd be really hard to sustain a perennial root system in these very thin soils with such dry conditions as are found in these sandstone glades. The Highland Rim is the next natural region that we're going to talk about, and this is where the big prairie remnants are located in the state. The Big Barrens area is part of this system, and is historically fires would have swept through this whole area because there's not a lot of surface streams. And if you look on a map, it's a big horseshoe area on the map that if you look at a map that talks about the hydrology, you'll see that there's hardly a surface stream within that. So this is an area that fire would have swept across without a lot of interference from stream systems to slow it down or stop it. So this area burned the most in the state of Kentucky, and that kept a lot of the grasslands intact and functional because there wasn't a lot of trees to shade out all of the prairie-loving species. A very unique natural community within this region is limestone flat rock glades, and this is a very interesting setup. There's a place we have protected down in Simpson County that has just basically a limestone pavement, and within that there are soil pockets that have very, very rare species in them, including the necklace glade cress, shown here as the white flower, and the beautiful little magenta flower, which is called flower of an hour. It opens up for a brief period of time every day, and then the flower petals close back up. And these species, again, just live in these little soil pockets where there's a lot of really harsh conditions to grow in. It's saturated in the winter and then baked dry in the summertime. The next region is the knobs, and this is a very distinctive area in our state. If you're traveling out of the bluegrass region, you have to go through the knobs in any direction but north. So this is a distinctive region. The hills are somewhat conical in shape. There's ridge systems that intervene between these cones that you see. It's a very distinct region, and the fact that the area has gone through such erosion, it's made those distinctive cones, or little volcano hills, if you will, that you see. And it was basically from stream erosion. This was a flat plateau, and through the force of water eroding all of this, the resistant sandstone caprock that's still present at the top of the cone wore away at a different rate than the underlying shales and siltstones and rocks that could not resist the erosion forces. And so it shows very plainly these conical shapes all across the region, and it just looks like little sentinels encircling the bluegrass region. The typical community type that you would see in the knobs is more of an oak pine community. The oak species again tend to be the ones that can withstand the drier conditions on ridges and rocky slopes, and the Virginia pine is the predominant pine in many of these systems. There are, however, some beautiful mesic forests represented in the north-facing slopes and coves of the Knobs region, and one of those is at Vernon Douglas State Nature Preserve near Elizabethtown. And if you ever have a chance, it's a beautiful place to go and see really massive old-growth trees. So that leaves us the bluegrass region, and that is level lands to gently rolling to the entrenched cliff-lined rivers and streams that we see. The tributaries to the Kentucky River have cut down through the bedrock and make these amazing little gorges along the stretch of the Kentucky River Palisades. The area has some of the richest soils and has been settled the longest, so we have the least good examples in this region of the state, just because there's been so much disturbance for so very long with settlement by Europeans. The Kentucky River Palisades, that stretches for 100 miles, is one of the most distinct features that you will see in the region. of the inner bluegrass. And in many instances, it is the last area that has been developed because it's so rugged and rough and rocky with the cliffs that some places here have some of the only intact forests that you'll find for the inner bluegrass of any extent. The oldest bedrock in the state is also exposed here in the Palisades region. The Ordovician limestones are 450 million years in age, and they're found basically at the waterline in the Palisades. There are a number of interesting community types, but a common one that's very rich and that most people go hiking in is the calcareous mesophytic forest, and that is characterized by ashes and oaks and sugar maple with buckeye, bitternut, hickories, black walnuts as well, and a rich flora on the forest floor, which is what really appeals to so many people in the springtime in this part of the state. You can see a wide variety of beautiful spring wildflowers. The outer bluegrass region is bumps into the knobs, and it is underlain by Ordovician and Silurian age limestones, and there is a little bit more moderate relief than the rolling to level areas that you see in the inner bluegrass region. Our last province, physiographic province, is the Appalachian Highlands, and that is the eastern portion of the state, and it is constituted by the Appalachian Plateaus and the Cumberland Mountains. And the Appalachian Plateaus are characterized by being really deeply eroded plateaus with steep hills and narrow stream valleys. And so as you travel towards the Red River Gorge, you'll see where it's flat on the top, but there's deeply dissected river streams and corridors that are characteristic of that. Additionally, the sandstones here are Pennsylvanian, and they are very characteristic of what you'd see in the Red River Gorge, for example. Massive sandstone, beautiful arches, again with very narrow stream valleys in between. The Cumberland Mountains are some of the most unique biodiversity in our state because of the altitude that you're at, and also the fact that it's influenced by being part of the Appalachian mountain chain. And the species there that you would encounter are typical of southern and northern Appalachian systems. So it's kind of, our Cumberland Mountains are central in the Appalachian chain, and they reflect that. So you can get some southern species and some northern ones mixing along there. Included in this region are Pine, Cumberland, and Black Mountains. Black Mountain is the highest elevation, and it definitely is indicated by some of the natural communities that you will see at those elevations. There are species that nest there that we don't have anywhere else in the state that will nest because they've got to fly onto a more northern climate. But for example, Blackburnian warblers will nest on the top of Black Mountain. Otherwise, you won't find them nesting. They pass through our state during migration, but they don't nest here. But conditions are met on the top of this mountain, and it definitely serves as a migration corridor. The backbone of these mountains provides good flying conditions, and I've been up there viewing hawks during migration, and lo and behold, here comes a monarch butterfly. So it's used by flying creatures as well as earthbound. The elk and the bear that have moved through our state they move along that mountain chain. So it's a great corridor for species movement. When I was managing the nature preserves system for the state, we always could have used extra help in leading hikes for people to just get out there and give us a hand with things that needed to be done, somebody who knew how to survey for birds or could, go out and tell us, hey, you've got all these really cool lichens, and oh, by the way, there's this cool moss, things like that would be really beneficial. And so my hope with the Master Naturalist program, the reason I got involved before I retired, was that I was wanting to help make sure that there were people who were going to be able to be equipped to come out and give us a hand with things. You don't need to be an expert. I get asked questions that stump me all the time, but being able to be comfortable with the public and help them with their curiosity and encourage them to investigate further is the goal. And you know, the bottom line is, if people are comfortable with nature and they find that they really enjoy having a better understanding of nature, then I think we'll be better off with the future lawmakers and decision makers being educated by the fact that their constituents are telling them, hey, do the right thing here. So any way you can contribute with the work that you're going to do after you take this course, and encourage others to pursue their curiosity, I applaud you and I hope that you will help us out and enjoy the course.
Great. So a big shout out to Joyce Bender. Again, I hope you enjoyed that virtual tour across the state. I feel like every time I hear Joyce present, makes me think of new places I want to get out and explore. So feel free to put in the chat if you have some favorite natural areas in Kentucky, some places you like to go. But hopefully that gives you a little taste of the types of things that we cover in the Master Naturalist program, that initial training. You know, it's all over the board. People talking about the different parts of the state and what you'd find in them, as well as going into greater depth about particular things that Joyce maybe mentioned. She talked about some of the plants. We might go into greater depth about that, the wildlife, the geology there. So lots of different topics and things that we'll study, as well as how to get involved. What are the organizations that are looking for help and what that might look like? So each week we try to do a mix of a more lecture style presentation like this one, and then more kind of hands-on presentations or discussions with maybe somebody who's out there in the field managing a natural area, focusing on that, or someone who's researching a particular species, a mix of different things. So if there are any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to give a quick update on kind of where we're at with the Master Naturalist program. So I mentioned it's really new and it's just starting out. So we have, so far, we've graduated 430 folks from our program in the classroom sessions. And I say classroom, but a lot of times this might be online over Zoom. Sometimes we'll have in-person cohorts, and we tend to have a regular online Zoom-based cohort each spring. So we've had 6 cohorts that have graduated since 2018. And if we just look at what those folks did last year, so in 2023, Kentucky Master Naturalist volunteered over 3,905 hours of their time doing all sorts of different things: environmental education, habitat improvement, infrastructure repair, citizen science, and more. That translates to over $124,000 in value to Kentucky and the natural areas and the people who get to use and enjoy those. So Master Naturalists just last year volunteered on the ground in over 35 different Kentucky counties, as well as 6 other states. And they had far-reaching impacts, offering virtual training, authoring educational articles, creating social media content, and more. This is just an example of one of our Master Naturalists, Janet James, and the great work that she's doing, photographing different plants and doing that in partnership with an arboretum. So just to give you some examples. So in our plans for 2025, we're going to have a new online cohort for people who want to become Master Naturalists starting in 2025. So we're going to have applications open pretty soon, and that will run from January through May 2025. Each week, we're going to have a different topic. But I will say we structure it so that you can join synchronously, like in person over Zoom, or you can watch the recordings at a later time and catch up if that works better for your schedule. We're also planning our 3rd annual Kentucky Master Naturalist Conference at Lake Cumberland State Resort Park on April 5th in 2025, with a pre-conference hike and meetup on April 4th. So those are just some of the things that we have coming up for Master Naturalists. And if you're interested in joining our program, please submit an application when those are open, and that way you can learn more and join us. So I just want to leave everyone with this great quote, I think, about kind of a philosophy that I would have with the Master Naturalist program is that you get to what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Our naturalists are doing all sorts of different things. There's kind of no one pattern. They all have different passions, different backgrounds, different things they want to do. And the unifying factor is that they're all working to improve nature in our natural areas. So just want to recognize them, but also invite you to join us. So if you have any questions, happy to take those now. Also, you can check out our website, and this QR code will take you there too. Our applications will be posted there probably in the next month, or you can send me an email, and I'll put my email in the chat to be added to a list. We'll let you know when they are open.